questions on the other assignments. For individual ones, hopefully there'll be like half the class for Open Lab. Is this big enough? Maybe I'll zoom a little in here. Yeah. I think I reset, so somebody had reset the underlying machine really big, and I reset it, and I think I set it finer than it was before. So there's a couple of things I could do, but I guess I can just run in a little bit of a zoom. I'm not in the full thing yet, so I've started it, right? So, okay, so I just need to go into there. Actually, zoom is something I'm not sure how. There is a zoom for this, right?
Control plus or some.
It does on the browser, which is probably actually all I need to do. How's that? Okay, so we're going to do inserts, updates, and deletes. As I said, these are much easier than like the subqueries or the joins. However, these are the first time we're doing anything that affects the underlying database. Each of these has their own dangers. I actually think update is the most dangerous. But inserts are dangerous just that if you can insert a lot of garbage. And once you have a lot of garbage in your database, it's not good anymore. So one of the app things you would want to do is to make sure that inserts are guarded to be relevant to the database and all of that. Do you guys have probably seen inserts before? I'm going to do the basic. So let's just insert a new person. Insert into person. And we want probably to list all of the columns. One of the problems with having an automatic numbering system for the key is that you pretty well have to list the columns. If you don't do that, and you use all the columns, you can skip listing them here. I'm going to do person. I wish I could do in SQL Server, you can just drag the column folder in there. So we want person last name, person first name, person email, person primary phone, and I'm going to break this. I think I'm only breaking it to keep it on screen, right? You don't have to. What? No, we're not going to do person key. It's a serial. It's what they call a serial. It auto numbers, so it doesn't allow you to insert into it. So person primary phone, person date added. So we're listing the fields that we're going to enter into. I'm going to do values. It's always plural, even if you're only entering one field. The other thing, just in terms of inserts, is you have to insert into anything that's required. If it's not required, you could leave it out. You don't have to put it in the insert statement. Does that make sense? Also, there are some defaults. I'm ignoring them because I don't remember what they are. But I think like person date added is a default where it defaults to today, right? It defaults to the current date. When you have defaults, you don't have to enter it. In the city, the address one, which we'll do next, because one of the things about having broken the tables up into all the information into separate tables is that most of the time to insert any one full piece of information means inserting into multiple tables. So there are some defaults. I think like the city and the state are defaults. It defaults to Seattle, Washington. So you don't, if you're in Seattle, Washington, you don't have to enter anything. If it's up to else, you do have to. Well, when we build tables, which I think is next week, I'll show you how to do defaults. So we need to do a value. Anybody have a good last name you want to use on this?
Mouse.
What?
Mouse.
Mouse. And you're gonna do Mickey. Yeah. That's maybe better. We've got Smiths.
Morse, I like that.
Morse is maybe better than Mouse, yeah. So, I mean, I remember the original Mickey Mouse Club, but I still can't spell Mickey. So the MM. At Disney.com.
Probably a real,
It probably is, probably not MM, but so and then the phone number, I'm just going to go. There actually is a pretty big Disney presence in Seattle. I don't know if you knew that. They do almost all of their computer stuff.
Online is all based on.
Yeah.
So they get talent.
I'm just randomly choosing numbers. I usually do like the 206 area code. 555 is reserved for like movies and TV when you have a phone number because there aren't any numbers. They do not assign 555 as a prefix.
Does the phone check for certain numbers, and what about foreign?
No, nothing is here is checking on any of this.
Build up something.
And I haven't done now. When you create a form, which is a whole different process, right? Involving whatever programming code you want, you can do a regular expression to check whether it's a valid phone number or not. Although the regular expressions usually want the parentheses, want the dashes and stuff, and I usually don't enter them that way, but you can. And with the email, you can put a regular expression that would guarantee that it has something in front. It'll allow dots and things. An @ sign, this plus a number of dots, and then a 3-letter extension of some sort. Now you have to actually be more flexible than that with a regular expression. I don't do it regular because there are also UK and country codes. So, but there are regular expressions that could control that, but this database itself doesn't. It just makes sure that they're character or. The other thing I will say, not that it matters, I always do phone numbers as character types. You're not going to add, subtract, multiply, or divide them. And there are some area codes back east that start with 0, which is illegal. I mean, I'd just drop it if it was a number. Also, if you do just straight int rather than big int, a lot of phone numbers are bigger than the regular int, and they'll throw errors because they're out of range. It's just a pain. Just make them characters. And then the last thing that's here is the date added, and I'm actually going to use a function for that. Current timestamp. Okay, so that's the basic pattern of an insert. Most of you have seen those before, right? The one thing that some people have issues with is this doesn't understand what these are. There's no correlation in terms of the meaning of this and what's down below. It's first goes to first, second goes to second, third goes to third, fourth goes to,
The only thing would be if you set types for those.
Well, so it'll complain if it's the wrong type. However, you could put the email here. You could reverse first and last names. It would have no problem writing. Yeah. They're all characters. The only one in this whole thing, the only thing that wouldn't be that you couldn't screw up is probably the timestamp because it's a big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I observed that the current timestamp is not in code.
No, because it's a function.
Oh.
So these are literal values, right? And literal values, if they're character types, they have to be in single quotes. And it has to be single quotes. You can't do double quotes, just like with the from, the where, rather. They have to be single quotes. I could run that right now, and maybe I will. Let me think. But there's a couple of other inserts we need to do, right? We need to insert into person address. And we need to also insert into the login table in order to have a complete insert for a person. We could ignore those because there's nothing that enforces that you have to put things in there, but functionally you would want to put them in there.
You have to fill in everything that says not null.
No, everything that's not null, yes. If it's nullable, you don't have to. But if it's nullable, you either have, if you have the field up here and it's nullable, you have to put it null, or you can leave the field out.
So the minimum is all the primary key.
Yeah,
And it could be other things as well.
I'm not sure I understood that.
Is every primary key not null?
Every primary key is not null, but mine is autofill. All right, so mine automatically populates the primary key. That's why it's not in the list. And generally, I would advocate doing that because it's a pain. Think about managing primary keys when you've got millions of rows. There are some disadvantages, though. I can insert the same person multiple times because each of them will have a unique key. So there's no guarding there against accidental duplication. Although I do think I put a unique field on the email, a unique constraint. If I didn't, we will. And if you put a unique constraint on it, then this one will make sure that the email at least never repeats and it would reject it if you did that. I think I tried to put it on the phone number too, but I think it fails because not all my phone numbers are unique. Does that make sense? So this is the basic thing. What I'm going to do is real quickly just do insert into the person address too. Because we need the person address. And I'm going to, so I'll go down here to person address. And again, the primary key is present, but we need the person key that just got inserted, and that's why I'm doing this right now. Person, I kind of hate how I name things here. Person address street. Person address city. The naming convention makes some sense, but it's a pain to type.
Edit that at any point?
It's hard to edit once it's up, because essentially what you have to do is you have to drop the column and re-add it with a new name, which means you lose all the data that was in the column. Yeah.
There's no way to copy those columns.
I wish in the SQL Server there is. Person address, where am I? City, state. Again, it's not case sensitive. Let me see if I can. So in SQL Server you could drag them. Can't do that here. It has create and refresh. I don't think it has copy. And if I try to Control C, what do I get? Nothing. So
So you can do a print on what is inside of a column. Can you print column head and then just copy paste from there?
what do you
Can
mean?
you print all those column headings
How?
by selecting?
I don't think so. So if I do Control, it doesn't even let me multiple select. I can't even multiple select.
But if you do the select print command, that would use
What print?
in your SQL database, SQL data.
There's no print command in SQL. I'm not sure what you mean.
Call them up and have them show up as help.
You mean like select star?
Yeah.
Oh, you could probably do that. I'm not sure it's worth it, but you could. I see what you say. Select star from, but then you can't anyway, because it's down here in the grid.
You select them all, save it.
So you have to save it somehow and then.
Yeah, I mean, you could do,
Okay,
let's just type them in. But yeah, you could, I'm sure you could find a way. There are some commands which we'll look at eventually too that return the table names, I mean the column names. But again, it would return it down here in the data output.
And you can.
And you'd have to, I think you'd have to individually copy them up, and I'm not sure that it would be that much easier.
But there's a rest after time.
Yeah. So where am I? We're on zip code. And then the apartment is nullable, so let's leave the apartment out. I know the apartment is nullable. So we'll do values again. Now, one of the things, this I might have to look up, the person key. We don't, particularly if you were coming through a form and you were doing this, you would have all these insert statements arranged, or your program would do it. We need to know what that person key is, and it hasn't happened yet, right? So there are ways to do that. If I go up to person, so let's see, person constraints. There is a unique constraint on this, and I think I need to find the function. I meant to review this before when I got here. Instead, I read the news. I shouldn't have done that. There's a function that will return the last auto number generated for this table.
You know what, so you just do a select.
If you ran the other one, you could do a select, but there's a way to do it ahead of time. And I think, so I'm just going to real quickly go to GitHub
Or curve
for the serial, right? Serial curval or something like that. You need the serial number. I think it is curval. And this is chapter 6, right? So into person address. Now I did another one where I did the curval, but I'm looking for that. There it is, curval person key sequence. This is one way you can do it. What that is it creates a sequence, and what the sequence is it's a function. Again, next week we'll make tables, and we'll make sequences. The sequence is a function that basically auto numbers. It looks at the last number and creates the next number in the list, right? This is what the current val is, whatever has most recently happened here within this sequence. And the naming convention by default for the sequences is the name of the table, the name of the key, and then sequence. I was trying to remember curval. Most database management systems have some kind of function like this that will return the last auto-numbered primary key in a table.
We can't get the last 2 or 3 if you would have a bunch of time.
So this won't work if I did 2 inserts here, because then you would totally not see this insert, right? You'd only see the second insert. This would not work if the primary key were not an auto number. This only works for the sequential auto numbers.
So if you were to insert, let's just say you had a separate phone number table, and so you insert person phone number, right, on the same thing, you could only
So generally what you have to do, like if and eventually we're gonna write a stored procedure to do this. You would want to do these things in sequence. So if you were entering multiple people, first thing you would do is insert the person, you'd insert the person address, and then you would insert into the login table, which we're gonna do next. And these would, you would do all of those, and then you would do the next person, and then the.
Could you do the curval if you needed the person key in the login table?
Yeah, we're gonna do it. It's the current value for this sequence. This sequence only relates to the person table.
Right.
So we're gonna use it again in the login. Does that make sense? As long as this is the last insert in person, current value will work. Where it won't work is if you inserted like 5 people all at once, and then you went to the addresses. Does that make sense? Because then you wouldn't have the key. Then you would have to go look it up.
If you had another key that was also sequencing itself.
They all sequence, but they all have a unique name. So this is the sequence for person. If I were to look at person address has one too, but it would be person address underscore person address key underscore sequence.
So it doesn't have to be the primary key.
No, it is the primary key.
That one is.
Yeah. They
Person
usually
address.
person address key is the primary key
Hopefully.
for that too. There are a couple of things. So you don't have to do a sequence. The thing is, if you didn't do a sequence for the key, you would have had to enter the key here, so you know what it is anyway. Right to the next one. The time when you don't know what it is because you're inserting on the fly and it's an auto number as a key. And again, it's a better. There are reasons. I'm not sure we want to go into relational theory right now, but there are reasons why auto numbers are preferred as keys. One of the reasons is that they have no meaning. So there's no business logic related to them. One of the problems with like using an email or something for a primary key, you can make it unique probably, but emails change a lot. They're too dynamic. Secondly, your business model may change where the email actually has a different function or is not that important anymore. And then you don't want to have to redo all your key structures or it becomes irrelevant, things like that. The key is only used to uniquely identify a row and to connect it to other tables. And the user in a web form or something never needs to know what those keys are. So the auto numbers, just a random number, is probably the best way to connect things. It's easy, it's efficient, it doesn't have it never gets outdated by changes in business logic. It's just the best way to do it. There are disadvantages to it in the sense that if you ever have to merge 2 databases, both of which have auto-numbered keys, you could have a mess. And there are tools to help you work your way around through that. But in general, that's really the only time it's a big disadvantage. And we're dead there. Okay, so let's get the other fields in here. So street, somewhere, 100 South somewhere. It's Disney, so I don't know, somewhere. What is Disney? Yeah, I've been there, but Enchanted something. What? It's somewhere near LA. I've been there, but it's been a while. So we got that. City. Now, city and state, I'm pretty sure are auto-numbered. So let's just leave those out and see if it works. And then I'm going to do whatever, something for that. These should have semicolons, and because we're going to run them together, they really should have semicolons. And then the very last thing we're going to do is insert into the login table. And the login table has it has the person key, it has a username, and it has a password. So I'm going to do a little bit different thing here. Person, password. Let's see if I can do this without looking. Select. This is a little bit different kind of insert. I am going to select, no parentheses, that's just. So I'm going to select Kerbal. So this whole thing, I'll just copy it. And I think there's an error there too, I just saw. I have an extra paren. All right, and then a comma, and the username is going to be first name. I think I did it as, did I do first letter of first name, whole last name? I'm trying to remember what I did. I think I did that. I am going to look. There's a max, I showed that, and then I showed the other. Select person key, lower substring, yeah, I did all of that. I'm going to just copy that and show it to you. Did I copy the whole thing or just the last part? Yeah. All right, so I'm going to break this so you can see it. So you can insert with a select statement, and this is really complicated, but we're getting the person key. We're getting the substring of the person first name, and then the person last name. So I'm creating a username that's like the one you have on your computer here. First letter of your first name, your whole last name. Does that make sense? Remember, this is concatenation. So we're getting the substring from person first name. We want to start at 1, and we're getting 1 character. Then we're doing the whole person last name. And then down here, to create the password, we're doing person last name, and then we're concatenating it with pass. The create password, by the way, is a function I wrote. We'll talk about it when we do functions. It kind of incorporates the crypt function. So you only have to pass in the password. Yeah.
Remind us of the meaning of the double bars.
What?
You remind us of the meaning of the double bars.
Those are concatenated. So it's going to run, this is going to be first letter of the first name and the whole last name run together. This is going to be the person last name plus pass. I did all the passwords that way. Bad idea again. But otherwise we have no idea what their password is because it's encrypted or it's hashed. We need to say this is from person. And we need to do a where. So where, and what we'll do is say where person key equals, and we'll do that Kerbal. Because we don't want to do this to everybody. Whoa, what did I just do? Control Z. There. That's a lot. That's a complicated one. I'm not gonna. That's really complicated. I know that. The other way you could do this is you could just do values, but you would have to. You would have to figure out. All of this. This way you don't have to know anything if you're doing the form. You don't have to know what their names are. You don't have to know. What it is. We could just insert it. I'm going to insert all of these in just a moment. There are other questions on that? Also, I just wanted to show you, and this is common, should go with me.
Well, I think you accidentally, instead of copying and pasting, I think you cut and pasted the per val
Yeah,
out of this.
Oh, that's what I did.
Control Z.
So there, yes, there should be a comma there, but you need to put the per val thing back in.
Okay. I thought I copied it. Yeah, obviously you were right, but why is it moving? Did you see how it shrunk in the back? I have no idea why I did that.
So Steve, I don't think we've hit enter yet, so my question is, how long does it remember CurVal, or is there anything you can
It
do?
will remember it if you run it in the same transaction. So one of the things is I have to run all of these together.
So you can't,
You can't run them individually. Well, actually you can, because CurVal actually goes and checks this, right? CurVal isn't remembering some variable. It actually goes to the table and checks that.
But just checking the most recent.
It's essentially just returning the most recent thing. Another way to do this, little less reliable in a multi-user environment, is to do max. Just say select max person key.
But that could change while you're.
It shouldn't if you're running them all together, right? But if you're not,
Now, what's the chance, like, in a large organization and you've got thousands of people in a data center doing?
yeah, but this could change too, right? I mean, if you got thousands of people. So one of the things when we do this is a stored procedure, they'll all pass as a single transaction. So then there's no danger of that. Here there is a slight danger because we've got 3 different statements. Now I can run these one at a time, or I can run them all together. Let's run them one at a time, I guess. One at a time has the advantage that if I screwed up, you'll see it a little bit clearer. All right, so that we have a new person in there. We'll look at it in a moment. So we're going to add the person address. And that is fine. This one is the most complicated, and let's see if I did this correctly. It said it was fine too. Notice it took a little longer, 131 milliseconds.
Can I run
Yeah.
an error? Like it said, it's time.
Don't quote the current timestamp. Current timestamp is a function. It's not quoted. If you quote it, it just treats it as text. Did it work?
Yeah, can you just go from this one second?
Which one?
Insert.
I got rid of the city and the state because I remember I put defaults on them. What that means is it should just say Seattle, Washington, right? That's the default. So these are inserts, and this is the weirdest insert, right? You can do an insert with a select. If you're inserting values that come from other tables, right? These are coming from the person table. They're being manipulated, but they're coming from the person table. Because we're getting the key from the person table. We're getting the first name and the last name from the person table. Right, we're doing all this. The create password, as I said, is a function I wrote. We can look at, we're going to write some functions here eventually too. So let's look at them and see if they happened. And then we'll go, there's one other thing for inserts, and then we'll do updates. So I'm going to do select star from person, and just so we see, I'm going to say where. Nah, I can't do that. So let's do just select star from person. And I'll just go to the end of the table. I was going to do, actually I know what I could have done. So we're at 133 rows. So there's Mickey Mouse at the bottom, right? Mouse, Mickey, mmdisney.com, the phone number, and the date. And if we do it from person address, now, again, what you can do, when you've set it up the way we have, you could use that in a form. It could run all three of those. The values could be substituted. Instead of literal values, they would be variables from the form. So at the bottom of the person address, we should have, we can get down there. Come on, down. At the very bottom. Is it, you know what, it may not be, what was the person's key?
133.
Okay, so let's do where person key equals 133. It doesn't always put them in order. There it is. So the person address key is 201. The person key is 133. South of Chance. Notice it put in Seattle and Washington.
It was all the way at the bottom, it just was showing person address key first, not person key.
Oh. But it was still, mine didn't look like it was at the bottom. But it may be because I'm not scrolling. I probably had to scroll on the outer thing as well.
Oh.
And then the very last thing we'll look at is the login table. Select star from login table. And we'll do the same thing where person key equals 133. And there it is, and the password has been passed. So the login key is 134. I think they started 2 or whatever. 133 is the person key in mouse, and then the pass. This is what happens to Mickey pass, or actually it'd be mouse pass. Yeah.
Go back to the address insert. Mine's throwing an error without not having enough.
So I cut out city and state. Do you still have those in there?
Oh, you removed them.
I removed them from the insert.
I didn't see that part.
Yeah. I wanted to see if the defaults were working. The number of values in the values thing has to exactly match the number up above. All right, so those are 3 inserts. Inserts are not hard. I mean, this kind of insert could be hard, but you don't do those very much. That's a pretty rare insert statement. Questions on?
So you just basically use Curvel when you just want to add something last, basically.
Well, you need the foreign key. Current value returns the person key that was installed in the insert person. The person key is the primary key of person. It's the foreign key in person address. It's what ties the person to the person address. And it's the foreign key in the login table. It's what ties the login to the person. It's the only thing that ties them together. So we need to get the right person key for all of those things. It's what ties everything together. So you use it whenever you need a foreign key. I mean, the other way you could do it is you could do these right after you insert the person. You could do select star from person, and you could go get the person key for the new person. That doesn't work if you're like creating a form on a web page, right? Because you can, but it's a really bad idea to insert, query the database, bring it back, do the next insert. Because you're going back and forth so much to the server on the database, while from the application, it's going to be very inefficient. And every movement to the server and back is a chance for a crash. You want to minimize, and it also means leaving the server open longer, which can be a problem for hacking. So you want to do it all as a big chunk, just pass it back. Does that make sense? All right. Let's do update.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Can you do these inserts on a live production server?
Yes. It happens all the time. Every time you order something at Amazon, it's inserting. You know. Yeah.
Drop your output so we can see all the code.
Which one? Oh,
Drop your
this.
output line down so we can see all the code. So check for something. Thanks.
Whoa.
I can't get the fictional board.
Duplicate key. So you can't insert the person again. One thing about it's so the curve out. Where is it for the thing? That one won't do. So you're probably trying to.
If you already did this, you can't do that.
You can't. Yeah, you can only insert once. See, do you have it in login table? Do where a person is this one. The person key.
Try changing it up there. So you need another one.
So it's not connected. So then Google us. Yeah, so it's in, you've got that's yeah, I don't know. The others are fine.
I can't ever see her. If she gives me the look, I do it, I go back and try to find the experience of how we did it. There's no way I can think like. Must be truly.
Anyone else have this one not work? I mean, it worked for me. I don't know. A couple of things about these inserts. You actually probably could enter. I don't know if I have a unique. I don't think I have a unique thing on the username or anything like that. So you should be able to do that more than once. This one you should only be able to do once, the person, because there is a unique constraint on the email. There's no unique on the address, so you could probably enter the same address multiple times. Don't want to, you shouldn't, but you can. Are we ready for updates? So as I said, I think updates are the most dangerous. Yeah, question?
So what would cause a person to a unique person case?
It can. If you had an error, it will that key goes away forever. If you failed one of the inserts, that key will go away forever. And that's not a problem. This drives people crazy, but it's not a problem. You do not have to have a neat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, etc. thing. It is not uncommon. If you delete something, to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12, 18. It doesn't matter as long as the keys are unique. And it does it on purpose. If something goes away or if you make a mistake, it doesn't reuse the number because it doesn't want like ghosts of old bad transactions hanging around. See?
But if you properly load the new person and you make mistakes in the lower inserts, it still can call up
The person key will stay the same, but the key down here might be something different. I mean, the key for the person address table might be not, so maybe the last one was 201 and the next one is 220, you know.
It might skip.
It'll skip, every time it fails, it skips to the next number. And I have seen, and I do not know why, though I've seen it more in SQL Server than here, where you're going along 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you have a couple of errors, and the next one, so you were at like 12, and the next one is at 120 or 130, and you didn't do that many delays. It just suddenly pops 100 or something. In the serial, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it's actually more related to what we're doing next time. But the serial number, the sequence number here is a big int. That means it's a 64-bit integer, which is big enough for most databases, right? It goes into billions. Regular ints could run out, and they'll warn you of that if you do like a regular int. So when you get up into a couple of billion, then you reach the peak. Yeah.
So the current val is not actually the key?
No, it's the key of the person table. We're looking for the key for the person table in each of these.
Yes.
It's not the key of the login table, and it's not the key of the person address table. It's the key of the person table. And that's what this sequence says, right? That it's the person key sequence. All right, let's do an update. Updates are simple. They're just very dangerous. So who do we want to update? Let's do. I'm just doing a select star from, I have it right up above. I could have just run it from there. I just wanted to figure out. So we've got Linda Carroll at the top. Let's change her. What do we want her new name to be? Yeah, we could do that. All right, so let's update person. We want to set person last name equal Hamilton. How do you spell Hamilton? All right, and then I'm going to do a comma because we're going to change the email too, person email. And I'm going to just do, so Linda Hamilton at Gmail. So we'll assume that she got married or went back to her maiden name or something. All right, so that, and then what you really want to do, this is critical, is where person key equals 2. What would you think happens if you don't specify where person key equals 2? Everybody's last name would be Hamilton. We'll do this in a moment. I will. Yeah.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So I'm going to execute that. And if I select from person now, so let's select from person where person key equals 2. I am not entirely sure what Postgres does with its result sets. Yeah, I think the one that you just edited ends up at the bottom. But so there's Linda Hamilton now. Is that the name in the Terminator?
Yeah.
that's the actress, so that's not her name.
I was gonna say, yeah,
Sorry, Sarah Connor, right, played by Linda Hamilton. All right, so this changed this, and again, you want to usually you want to specify exactly what one you want to change. I'm going to do two things real quickly, just to show you the dangers of this. So I'm going to select person, last name, person, first name, person, email, and I'm going to select into email list. Did I spell person wrong? Yeah, I didn't finish it, did I? Into, we'll call it email list from person. Basically, I'm creating a table I can destroy. All right. This is actually kind of neat, and I'll show it to you more next time. But when I do that, it actually creates a new table called email list that has these three fields into it. So if I do select star from email list, did I do two? I did do two L's. I have a new table with just the emails and the person's names. All right, so I am going to show you a bad update. So I'm going to update email list, and I'm just going to set last name, person last name equals Smith, and just to show you the effect, and then we'll drop the table.
Do you want us to do it as well?
You can, but make sure you did create the email list. You don't want to do this on person. So when I do that, it's perfectly happy to do that. And when I run it, everybody's name is Smith. Right? So I always think of this as the last scene of the Matrix. Imagine what your boss would think if you did this to a record with several million records. And it doesn't warn you. It's perfectly happy to do it. There's no "Are you sure?" And there's no at this level. There's no undo. All right. The only way you could undo this is to restore from a backup. Does that make sense? I am going to show you a way you can do this and undo it. So right now I'm going to drop email list. I'm going to recreate it in a minute. So I'm going to do drop table email list. I'm not sure if we've dropped anything before. Do you guys know what that does? The email list no longer exists. Drop is really dangerous because it drops the whole object. And again, notice there was no "Are you sure?" You know, it's just gone. Yeah.
So what would you have to do to get that new table to show up in your column?
It would. We just have to refresh it.
So you refresh would be
Yeah. So I'm going to recreate the table again.
So run that again.
Yeah, I'm running it again because this time I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm going to show you how you can control it with a couple of caveats, and then we'll do deletes, and then we'll be done. So yeah, drop gets rid of it. If you do that, we are going to. So it's back again. So if I do select star from email list, it is back. And if I go to tables, if I go up to tables and right click and do refresh, you'll see that email list is in the list of tables. This is not necessarily your greatest way to make a table. You know, there's no keys, foreign keys, you know, it's just. But it's a good way. It's a good way to make a temp table to do something. And in fact, later, I think like next assignment after this, we'll do tables, and instead of saying in the email list, I'll say in the temp table email list. And then it's a table that will only exist for a little while, right? This one, actually, because I didn't do temp, it's a permanent table until I drop it. All right, so what I'm going to do exactly the same command as I did last time, except before I do that, I'm going to say begin transaction. And you have to run it. You can't just type it. All right. So when I run this, what I've done is I've taken manual control over the transaction. Couple of caveats about this. No problem when it's a standalone database like this. But if this were a production database, we've just frozen it, right? Nothing will happen until this transaction is finished, right? Then that's a problem, especially if you go away to lunch or something.
Did you do update email list after that when you did the begin transaction?
I haven't run it yet,
Okay.
but I will. So this is begin transaction. So you're manually taking care of a transaction. Every action, every command you run is a transaction, but they're what they call implicit transactions. So when you run this, it does a transaction and it commits it. When you manually take it over, then you have a choice. So when I run this, all right, so it's fine. And when I select from email list, once again, they're all Smith. But now I have the option of saying roll back transaction. And I can do this. And then when I run the email list again, it's back to the way it was. So when you manually take the transaction, it doesn't commit it to the database table unless you actually say to do that. It's hanging out there as a temp table. You know, it's basically a scratch table until you either roll it back or your other option is to commit. And again, if you commit the transaction, there's no rollback, right? And if you roll back, you can't commit. I mean, it's one or the other. So if I ran it and committed it, then it would be Smith all the way down. Okay. By default, if you don't do begin transaction and actually run that, each one of these assumes a begin and commit, right? They're all automatically committed.
After you begin transaction, you make a change, and then you roll that transaction back, and then you commit the transaction. Would that basically?
No, so if I run commit transaction right now, it's going to give me an error.
Because there's nothing changed.
Because there's no transaction in progress. You either commit or you roll back.
So
one
when
or
you
the
roll
other.
back, are you no longer in manual?
Yes, once you roll back, once you've done either roll back or commit, it releases the
Okay,
table.
so you don't have to end it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's the usefulness of this?
It can save you from a huge accident.
I mean, you can run that save and then see the results before
Yes, you
actually
can.
commit it to the database.
So when we did this, like we'll do it again. I'm going to drop the table anyway, so let's destroy the table again. So I'm going to begin the transaction. I'm going to run this. When I select from it, now it's all Smith, right? So I can look at it before I commit it or roll back. And then we can roll it back, or if we commit it, then we are now literally committed to nothing but Smiths.
And so either commit or rollback ends the begin transaction.
Right,
There's
right.
not like an end transaction.
No, there's no end. It's the way a transaction ends is with rollback or commit.
Now that you've done that, how do you just screw yourself?
Yeah, the table's screwed. So I'm going to drop it in a minute. Yeah.
In terms of what it begin transaction, does that just freeze Does that freeze the whole database?
I think it actually only freezes the
Or
tables.
it just freezes?
Well, the thing is, we've begun a transaction. We haven't told it what we're
we haven't-
transacting
so
on.
the whole thing is just
I think it-
waiting until-
I will look, because I'm not sure how Postgres does it. It may lock out everything,
Okay.
but it may only lock, but because it doesn't know what tables
Right,
you're
yeah,
doing
because
on at this
it
point,
doesn't
yeah.
specify.
With all of you, I did the rollback, so it took everything from Smith back to the normal.
Right.
stance. And once you do that, are you good?
Yeah, you're
Do I-
good.
Okay, don't do anything else. Okay.
The commit is the other option.
Can you roll back any command?
Not any. There are certain administrative commands that don't have a rollback. Right.
So this is how you're like doing a big batch transaction.
Right. So one of the things you can do in a batch transaction is you can create tests for errors. And if an error tests positive, you roll back. If an error tests negative, you commit. Right. So you can do this within a transaction if you're writing out like a stored procedure.
But you're not going to do that on the production server, are you? Or in the test environment?
You can if you do it in a stored procedure. Because in a stored procedure has the advantage, and again, this is like 3 weeks down the road, maybe longer. In a stored procedure, you can have like a dozen commands, but they execute as a single transaction.
Right. Right, so it's like a whole.
Right, it's a batch.
Yeah.
It's a batch of commands. And within that batch of commands, you can begin a transaction, constantly keep testing for an error. And if there is no errors, you can, if there are no errors, you commit. If there is an error, you roll back. Yeah.
If you commit to a transaction that takes a long time, can you roll back before it's over?
Yeah, I think so. That's actually a good question.
Did you kill the transaction?
Yeah, I mean,
Roll back.
there are tools that let you monitor threads and processes, and you can kill processes. So typically, when you're doing a batch, like a stored procedure, they go in a millisecond, so it doesn't affect.
Yeah.
But yeah, if it's taken a long time, and you had frozen it up because it was taking too long, then you might want to kill that processor. Definitely re-optimize that batch.
So I'm just not clear on a commit. We didn't roll back the other additions, for example. Are those committed? Or nothing's committed because they can?
No, so these by default, every transaction is implicitly begin transaction commit. When you run this, I'm not doing a begin in transaction, right? But implicit in it, so it is begin transaction, commit transaction. So that's implicit all the time. Begin transaction, commit. Begin, commit. That's what it does unless you explicitly tell it otherwise. So those are implicit. This is explicit. This is where you're explicitly taking control.
So you can't use commit or rollback unless you've used begin.
That's true. You cannot use either of these unless you've done begin. And again, the drawback, as you say, for production is that you're locking the database. I'm showing it to you here mostly because if you were afraid of when you're doing your updates, we're not in a terrible, you can always go back to GitHub.
So is it best practice to use begin transaction all the time?
No, because it locks the database. Now, if it's your own database, it doesn't matter. But if 100,000 people are working on the database at the same time, they're going to hate you.
They can tell who won.
The administrators could. There are other things that lock the database. That's a whole concurrency is a whole set of. It's not really a SQL issue. It's more of a database administrator issue. But concurrency has all sorts of issues like who has priority, how do you lock it, how much do you lock, because you can get different granularities of locking. When you do an update, generally, without the begin and rollback, you lock that row, whatever you said. And if you don't have a where clause, you're basically locking the database. I mean, not table, right? But when you have a where clause, it'll just lock the row, right? So because you can't have two people updating the same data at the same time, right? When you do an insert, it can lock part of the table too, and there are ways to group the table. Different databases do it a little differently. But again, concurrency is a huge topic.
So if you are doing like a major upgrade, we want to test that environment in a non-production environment for you to get online?
So it depends. If you're doing a major, a lot of times you have to take it offline to do major upgrades, right? Typically, the way big companies do it is they have multiple copies of the database running at the same time, right? And there's failover things so that if one fails, it'll switch to a different server which has the same copy of the database. And they're constantly shipping logs back and forth to keep them concurrent. So typically, when you're doing an update, what you do is you take one of them offline, do the update, you ship the logs to the others to sync them. You know. Again, more networking stuff, not necessarily SQL stuff. But that actually has been a big issue because it used to be you just take your database down 3 in the morning and run changes, but there's no 3 in the morning anymore. It's 24/7. All right, one last thing I want to show about an update. Why is this not illegal? Right? You ever wondered? You might want to do something like this. I'm going to drop the email list actually first. All right, and then I'm going to, we have, I'll show you, like select star from, what is it called? Grant type. Okay, this is taking longer than I meant, but. So in the grant type, whoa, I didn't want to do that. Oh, well. In the grant type, there are max amounts for one time and max amounts for lifetime. Can I? No, it's not going to go. I don't know how to redock it down there. So anyway, you have those things. You might want to, let's go. What? Oh. I did it last time where I did the, did that lock? No, it just split it again.
Okay. If you can grab the data output and put it back into that smaller table.
Like up here?
No, just.
Oh, in here, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know how to redock it.
Yeah, I don't either. I haven't figured out how to redock these. I mean, I can do that, right? But yeah, we'll let it be for right now. I've only got a couple more things to show. So I'm going to update grant type. And I'm going to set grant type one-time max. Let's say we want to increase everything by 5%. So I'm going to do equals grant type one-time max. God, I hate how I name things. Times. Now I got to get that out of the way more. So times 1.05. That'll increase everything by 5%. And since we're doing that, we might as well also do grant type lifetime max equals grant type one time or lifetime max. Times 1.05. We're increasing everything by 5%. See, there's a grant type lifetime max, grant type one time max. And I'm not putting a where clause because I'm doing it to all of them. Right? I'm upping all of them by 5%. Oh, so I spelled something wrong. Grant type lifetime max. What did I do? Oh, I left out T's. Did I leave it out both times? No, just this time. So that happened, right? And if we were to run select star from grant type again, everything should be up 5%. So data output over here. Why did it not do this? I did select. Where's my data output? It's there. Why is it not showing it?
You don't,
9 rows affected. I'm not seeing my select results.
I think it has to do with how you pulled out your. I
Yeah,
had the same thing. I had to close it and reopen it. Now it's how it works.
which the close and reopen the
I had
whole
to close
query.
the whole, yeah, the whole thing.
Well, we could do that. I mean, I could do Control A, Control C. I'm just going to do, I'm not even going to close it. I'm just going to do a new query window. And then I'll paste. And hopefully there it is. Okay, so then if I do there, so they've all gone up. You might not know that because you can't tell from the reason why it's not illegal, this is the only point, is because there are times when you want to do it. There are times when you want to update all the values at once. Like if you want to raise all your prices by 5% or 10%. All right, so delete. Delete, as I say, is a little less dangerous because it generally will give you an error. You cannot, so if I say to delete from person, where person key, so we just added 133, right? Generally, that won't work. It'll give me an error. You can see the error message. It's because there's a foreign key. You cannot delete a parent that has children. Right? This all sounds really cruel, but you can delete children, but you can't delete the parent. In order to delete the parent, you have to delete all the children first. Right? You have to go delete the children first. There is a thing that will allow you to delete through. It's called cascade delete. When we make tables, I'll talk about it. In general, I suggest not doing that because it's really, if you accidentally delete something on a parent table, it cascades and deletes all the children too. So if it's much easier to accidentally lose a lot of data when you have the cascade in place. So this one won't delete because the login table, and if we didn't have the login table, it would still fail because of the person address table.
On
Right.
person, the primary key.
What? The primary.
Does the primary key have something to do with this? Nothing.
Well, so you could delete it. Like if we enter a person, I actually didn't show you one thing about, let's insert a couple of people just real quickly.
Can't delete the reference name of the data because you leave all the data in your tables.
What you don't want are orphans. That's what they call them. you don't want orders with no customer, right? You don't want grant requests with nobody requesting them, right? Which if you could delete the parent, that's what would happen. Yeah.
Mine ran.
Here's Rand.
Did the-
Did you do the?
Mine ran for two, I think it's because I didn't actually have anything in it. I think it
You mind if you don't have a person 133? Is yours person different number?
Oh,
Okay.
can you, if you put delete and all the dependencies in there, like 3 of them at once, can you do it all together?
No. You delete like
That's it.
that's it. Yeah. You would have to delete person 133. Do we want to do that? We could delete from person address where person key equals 133, and then we would also have to delete from login table.
So you do all the
Yeah,
rest.
where person key equals 133. Couple of dangerous things here.
So you're gonna delete those all, you're deleting all the other dependencies.
You have to delete the other dependencies, and then you can delete the person. We'll do that, I guess.
Can you do, can you delete those if they're linked to one another, or are they just?
They're not linked to these.
They're individually linked.
These are
so
all.
you
These are both child tables. They're not linked to anything else. Couple of things about this. Because these are child tables, the rule doesn't apply. If I said delete person address without the where clause, it would be gone. The whole table, all the data would be gone. Again, no warnings, no yes. Are you sure? They would just be gone. So if you delete from person address without a where clause, it's just gone. You can do the send transaction thing if you want. If you delete from login table without a where clause, it's just gone because it's a child table. Couple of things which have more to do with when we do admin and security is that don't give permissions to people to do that. And that's why you should not be in here as an admin, unless that is something you really need to do. Because you could accidentally cause a lot of damage. All you have to do is be 3 a.m, you had a couple of beers, and you had to get onto the database to do some work, and you just forget the where clause. Right? It can happen.
Just for CC, can you use begin transaction with delete?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so that's just a good guide.
That's a good, yeah. I mean, for a standalone database, I would probably do that. So we've gotten rid of that. We've gotten rid of that. And now the person can go away. Now, as I said, there is a thing when you build the tables. You have to do it when you build the tables and when you build, particularly when you build the foreign keys. There is a thing called cascade delete. It says if you delete the parent, delete all the children. Again, I don't suggest doing that. It's really convenient, but it's a way easy to lose stuff. So person 133, if I do a select star from person, where person key equals 133, it should return nothing. Doesn't throw an error, just returns nothing.
It would look that same way if there had never been a person.
That it would, yes, it would do the same. So if I did person key 153, which doesn't exist and has never existed, same thing, right? It's just a non-existent person. The one thing I didn't show you, and I'm trying to think of where I want to do this. I guess we'll do it for person. Oh, all right. So let's look at job position. I want to do something where there's not much data to do. Select star from job position. This is me remembering what's in the table. Okay, this is an easy insert. So I'm going to insert into job position. And I'm just going to do position name. I'm not going to do descriptions. It's what I did before. All right. And I'm going to do values. So what job positions do we want that aren't there already? I want to do like 2 or 3. Vice president would be good.
Cook and bottle washer.
All right, that sounds good. Okay. So we'll do one more garbage dumper. Okay, and you can do this for as many as you want. This is all I wanted to show you, actually. Bottle Wasser. Little German sneaking in there. All right. You can do this for as many as you want. When the first one has values and the rest just have parentheses and commas. And again, if you have multiple fields, then each of these would have, whatever is in the fields. I just wanted to show you that this is also a valid way to insert when you're doing a lot of inserts together. So now if I go back up to select star from job position, they're all, we got vice president, cook and bottle washer, garbage dumper. And this is something you can do in any data. I mean, that's standard. So if you're doing a lot of inserts, you can do it like that. Not have to write insert into for every single row. This wouldn't work if you needed the key, right, for the next one, because you're doing the multiple inserts.
Can you automate the process with a script?
Of what?
I think can you automate the process with regular scripts that will do this for you?
So, to some extent, I mean, if you know what the values are going to be. Right, so I mean, you could have a form where you, instead of putting, but typically you don't have multiple things here. Typically what you do is you just do a variable name from the form for the insert, and then just repeat the statement out because you don't know ahead of time how many you're going to do. So typically that's insert into values, insert into values. They tend not to. By automate a script, when we do the, I mean, I have a script and I actually generated it from, so if we go to I mean, this is a script, I guess, and I generated it by doing a backup to text. So this is generated by Postgres, but it's just taking what's in the database and turning it into a script, including all the inserts at the end. So I don't know if that's automating it. I don't know. It makes a copy of the database that you can run. And the way you do that is you just go backup. And we're going to do this actually later, but we'll do it in SQL. So you give it a file name. Except I want to do it. I want to do it somewhere other than, so let's do that. Okay, so we do select that. I want, instead of custom, I'm going to do plain. Plain will put it into SQL. You can do it as tar, you can do it as a binary file. One job, dump options, pre-data. Pre-data is the tables. Go. Why is it not going? There. Data, yes. Post data, maybe. Post data are like triggers and things. That looks good. Don't need that stuff. Let's do use insert commands. We don't need to create database, although you could put that in there. We don't want to drop database. We're not going to disable the triggers. All of that is good. I could do backup. But where did it say Python? Where was the Python? Dump options, pre-data. Yes, I want it. All right. Data, yes. Yes. Don't need any of that. Inserts. What does it mean, no directory Python? I don't understand where that's coming from. Anyway, generally that will create a script. I'm not sure why it's not creating a script here.
What is it? What is predated, postdated?
Predata is the tables. Predata are the table structures, so create table. I mean, you can back up just the data, but I was also backing up the create table. And then you can also back up the post data things like triggers and keys and constraints. And I've never had it. I'm not sure why Python is why that's giving us an error there. We will do this actually eventually, but we'll do it with commands, SQL commands, as opposed to doing it this way. But I've never had that fail, and I'm not sure what the Python thing is. It must be something in this environment that's set. Because I don't actually have Python, I have Python 3. That might be it, but I'm not sure why it needs Python. I'm done anyway. I took way more time than I meant to. Do you guys have questions? I'm going to post the code here. So there is a code in GitHub, which is what the chapter had. Then I'm going to post this code in the blog, and the video hopefully has sound this time. I guess one of them didn't. Is that this one or the other class?
It wasn't this class.
It wasn't
It was
this.
the middle one.
Yeah, okay. So let me get out of here to stop the video. One reason these take a long time is you guys have questions, which are good. It's good that you guys have questions.